Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. I am live today with Katie Marie, and she is an expert on helping you still achieve your goals, even if you're multi-passionate, which a lot of my audience loves a lot of different things. They love wellness, they love coaching, they love personal development. They have so many things they want to offer to the world, so many people they want to coach or work with. And so I think this is a really good topic for them. But before we get into that, tell us what you do, how you got into it, and your story.
Yeah, thank you, Hailey, for having me on today. I am an entrepreneur, but also a business-minded woman. I work full-time in human resources, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon because I love it. But I also am an entrepreneur. So I own Katie & Co., which is a virtual assisting firm, and we help other businesses grow and do social media management as well as Pinterest management. And how it all started, though, for me was as a photographer over a decade ago, and we were able to scale that and then kind of move a little bit in a different direction. We're still taking on some clients, but we have shifted a bit just due to changes in the business. And yeah, I'm super passionate. As you can tell, I have a couple different things that I have going on. So today's topic will be a lot of fun to chat about.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about juggling your own business and working in HR full time, because that is what a lot of entrepreneurs face when they're trying to start their business. They can't just quit everything and leave. They have families to support or they need to, keep their job while they're growing their business. So what has helped you be able to shift gears after work, work on your business, and through the hard times of frustration when you're like, I wish I could spend more time on my business? Tell us more about that.
Well, there are definitely mornings when I'm like listening to a podcast on the way in and I get all fired up and I'm like, okay, now I have to do my day job. But again, I do love my job. I definitely approached it like a startup. And so I've been able to really lift and shift and take certain things from the business aspects and put them towards my career, as well as take things I've learned in my career and apply it towards the business. So a tangible example of that is actually, and most people I think take what they learn from their job and apply it to their business, but this is the opposite. I utilize a CRM, client relationship management tool where I onboard all my clients through. And I realized that my onboarding is like really quick and really easy. And then at my day job in HR, we were sitting for an hour, 2 hours with each candidate to get them onboarded, to do all the paperwork, to follow the compliance. I was like, that's not working. Like, I don't particularly care to sit with someone for 2 hours while they're doing paperwork and making sure they're signing on the right spot. So the first thing that I did when I took over the department was treat it like a startup and say, hey, we need systems in place that will make this more sustainable. And so we switched everything to electronic onboarding, which has been beautiful. It's about 26 minutes on the candidate side, not even mine. And they do it from the comfort of their home. So they don't have to lean into me for questions, or I don't have to keep them moving or worry about stepping out of the room. And so just taking things in a bigger umbrella and saying, what can I do in my career versus in my business? And how do these two things translate to one another for the success of both has made my life a world of difference. And with that, I still come home and still, take a PTO day here or there to focus on the business or have to work late into the evenings. But finding that overlap has been huge. That synergy has been huge.
I love that. Yes, because then it makes your day a lot more fun because you're always looking for what's the lesson in this, or how does this also apply to my business, or what can I gain from, how this skill will also apply in my business.
And when you are someone who has a lot of passions, do you have any tips for like deciding which thing to pursue and in what order, and, juggle your different passions?
Yeah, that's a loaded question because it's so intimate to who is answering it. But for me, the way that I see things, and this is kind of what I've come to over the last couple of years, is my entire world is like a triangle. So one point of that is human resources. One point of that is my podcast, my business, which is Katie Murray Photography. And then the third point is Katie & Co., which is our second business, which helps serve clients and help them grow their business. But what's in the middle? In the middle is helping others in their career or in their business. And I use those terms interchangeably. But so in the middle for me is helping others. And then you can niche down as much as you want. So I would say when you're looking at everything that you're doing, it might start to feel like you're just throwing stuff at a wall and hoping things stick, especially for coaches who are like, I don't want to just offer one-on-one services, but I also want to offer a product that they can purchase or a digital download or all these other things. But I'm a coach, so that doesn't make sense. Well, start to hone in on what that looks like and what you want to do. Find your triangle or your hexagon or your circle, whatever it is, so that you find that synergy that all go into the one thing, and then start to kind of explore the branches off of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. And maybe give an example of something that went well in your business, that was started as a passion project, but then maybe, turned into something more.
Yeah, great. Great question. So when I was a photographer, I have a almost 5-year-old daughter. And so prior to having a child, I loved just going to coffee shops and hanging out with other entrepreneurs and just talking shop and giving ideas. And I found that I started to become kind of a source of information for these people because I'd been at it a little bit longer. There's also local meetups pre-pandemic that we would do and stuff. And I always took a leadership role. And so then one day I was standing holding my infant daughter, and I think the global pandemic was kind of upon us and like all this stuff. And I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And initially it was just a podcast. I just wanted to talk on it. I wanted to see like what I could explore with it. I didn't necessarily have a huge vision, but I knew that I wanted to be on that platform. And it has since snowballed. We have over 200 episodes. But the cool thing about it is, again, it's a funnel back into my business. So if someone wants to grow their social media following, or they want to, explore Pinterest, but they don't want to do the hard work themselves per se, they can outsource to us. And so that came from like a passion project to now 2.5 years later, 200 plus episodes, 50 plus guests, like all this networking came from this little idea that I was like, okay, let's see if it works. And I'm proud to say it has, and I still am in love with it. I still enjoy recording and doing the research and just being that information source for people.
Nice. That's so cool. And one of the things I'll say, because I got to be on your podcast and it was super fun, and I really loved that afterwards you sent a little like thank you note and like a gift voucher, I think, to your services or something like that. Like, I don't have it exactly in front of me right now, but it was just very like, oh, that is so awesome. And that is like great follow through. And it made you a way more memorable podcast that I was on, right? Because I'm on them a lot. And usually you're like, wait, which podcast was this one? So it's a great way to stand out. So speaking of multi-passionate entrepreneurs who are like, but I want to help everybody, but they still want to stand out online. And we hear, oh, you got to niche down. Oh, you have to, pick something to focus on. What are your thoughts on that? Because everybody on my show has a different perspective on niches and, specificity in your messaging and things like that.
I used to be that same person who's like, well, I don't want to niche down. Let's just look at it from like a photography standpoint. I was like, I don't want to only do weddings, because then how many people am I going to turn away that I could be booking on the weekends for family photos or headshots or corporate or this or that or the other thing. And I started to realize that just because I niche down doesn't mean I can't still serve those clients. So recently I had a organization reach out for headshots for like 30 employees, and I said yes, and I booked it. But someone 5 years ago or 10 years ago if they were talking to me, I would have thought that meant I had to turn them away. And really what it means is you're just honing in on your messaging, but you can still bring the crowd with you if the others follow. You're just saying, hey, I want to speak directly to Hailey today, but if other people take away content from this, awesome. So for me, I believe niching down is important, but not necessarily 100% all or nothing. Again, I'm multi-passionate. I have a triangle. I have all these different points. So as long as you're clear on your messaging and you know what you want to get out of it, then niche down as much or as little as you want. Now, if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. But if you're like, hey, I'm not booking any clients, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not, getting any traction under me, then maybe consider niching down. So again, it's kind of, and it's so funny because I'm normally very black and white, and this is a nice little gray area. But I would say it depends on where you're at in your business and what your long-term goals are of how much you should or shouldn't niche down.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, sometimes what happens is you pick a niche, you pick to be known for one thing. And then over time, you can start to expand because you've kind of already earned your stripes, and you can, it's like I always use the example of Tony Robbins started, I think, just with hypnosis and helping smokers with hypnosis. And that was like his dominant clientele in the beginning. And now he does personal development for everyone, right? So now the other thing though is if you're going to talk to everyone, you're already competing with like people like Tony Robbins, right? Yeah. So what about any tips? Because you said that you have a 5-year-old, I believe, or is she still 5? Okay. And you work full time and you have your own business and a lot going on. What do you do when you feel super behind, super overwhelmed? This is something I hear a lot from people who have lots of projects going on.
Well, the first thing I do is I wallow in it for like 2 minutes, and then I pull up my big girl pants and say, hey, what do I need to do? And that's where I start to shift my mindset and find the synergy between the different tasks that I have to do. And with that, it means time blocking and being intentional with what I'm doing. Honestly, I'm coming out of a little bit of a experience like that over the last couple of weeks. There's just been a lot on my plate, and I feel like I'm spinning my wheels a little bit, but I have to slow down and say, okay, have a moment, be overwhelmed. Okay. Now let's move into triage. And for me, it's as simple as writing down everything that I have to do. I utilize a journal to write everything down. And it's more or less because I believe that by writing it, it's in my brain a little bit more and whatnot. And then I allocate it throughout the week. And so I use a time block schedule, and I utilize, as you're probably familiar with, SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And with that, I start looking at my week and I say, what are my non-negotiables? We have gymnastics on Thursdays, so I'm not giving that up for my daughter. We have family meal on this night, and then I backfill from there. Usually my husband and I will decide which nights at the start of the week will be our quote unquote working nights and which ones will be our rest nights, to make sure that we're honoring ourselves and self-care and giving ourselves time while still chipping away at bigger goals. So again, I would say a major thing is finding synergy between the items that you have to get done. So again, as like a coach or as someone who wants to break into like online services or whatnot, figuring out what go together and what you can quote unquote lift and shift. So for me, like I said earlier, like I can lift and shift my CRM platform in a sense and apply that to my HR role. So just figuring out that synergy and really leaning into it, I think, is hugely beneficial.
Gotcha. I love that. And I like the idea of coordinating with your partner, work nights and rest nights. And for anybody who does want to learn time batching in a little more depth, I do have a free time planning system. So it's at haileyrowe.com/time planning, and it takes you through that whole process. But what are some common mistakes that multi-passionate entrepreneurs maybe make?
I think one of the huge ones, and I've done this, so I can completely relate from experience, is like taking on too much than you can like chew, if you will. So if I were to have decided to be the head of human resources and launch Katie & Co. and grow my photography business, all while then also trying to do Ginger Biz, the podcast, there's no way in heck that I would be able to do that. So you really have to learn to slow down and be okay with a slower sort of dance. One of the other topics I talk on a lot is slowing down as a high achiever to be successful. And it sounds counterproductive productive. I forgot the word for a second. But really slowing down and being present with what you want to get done and what you need to get done versus what you have to get done and what needs to take a back burner. There are weeks and times. October is a busier season for me for photography, obviously, because people are doing fall photos for the holidays. And it's also a busier time for podcasting for me because I have more flexibility. Whereas in May at my day job, I'm hiring 200 to 300 people. So I don't have as much flexibility. So really giving yourself the grace to know when things are going to ebb and flow, and they're ebbing and flowing at different times. So again, right now work might be a little bit slower, so I'm able to focus more on extracurriculars after hours, whereas in the springtime my work is going to overflow into my hours. And so just really being conscious of that, because I think that's a huge mistake people don't think about. They're like, I can do it all and be it all, and you absolutely can, just not at the same time.
Right. Yes, you can have it all, but not all at once, as I say. And I think that being okay with that, or finding a way to emotionally regulate yourself with that when you are a high achiever, is a hard thing for a lot of people. So how do you help? Because it sounds like you have seasons, for example, where you're busier with your HR job and seasons where you can be doing more for the business. How do you reassure yourself, honestly, when because some people think, their mindset is like, well, if I can't do it all the time and do it consistently and do it perfect, then I might as well not do it at all. So how do you coach yourself through that?
That's a huge one for me. I also think about it a lot with progress over perfection, because I am a perfectionist and I too want to be like, no, it's got to be everything. But there's a couple things. One is seasons of focus and knowing that you've allocated time down the road. So at the time of the recording, it's late October, and historically in October, I'll batch a lot of content and do a lot of guest episodes for the podcast. I did that last year and was able to batch through July of this year. So I did about 7 to 8 months worth of work in that month. But then I also knew that then the tables would turn a little bit and I'd be able to focus on the business. And so for me, knowing that this isn't the end all be all, that I have more time in front of me to do more things, I think is hugely important. So those seasons of focus, and also energy management. We talked about time management, and energy management is not something that I'm huge into because I'm kind of like a grit your teeth and get it done sort of gal. But energy management, I might batch a bunch of content, but then have to basically put out all the marketing for it. And that to me is a little more creative. The coming up with the content is a breeze. I can write the script, I can have my outline ready to go. But when it comes to creating the content and the graphics and stuff, that falls more into energy management for me. And so by giving myself a big runway to be able to work on that, and if tonight I sit down and I'm like, wow, I don't feel creative, knowing I have a couple more days to chip away at it is totally okay. And just giving myself that grace, because I think oftentimes we do think it has to be all or nothing, or everything has to be perfect. But if I waited till my podcast was perfect, I would never, ever, ever launch it. And let me tell you, and this is a little bit cheesy, but when I was first recording solo episodes, I would record them 5 times, because anytime I hit something where I messed up, I was like, oh, I don't want to edit it because I want it to sound perfect. But I can't memorize a script and not stutter through my words for 45 minutes. So I quickly had to say, no, it's progress over perfection. And then guess what? It gets closer and closer to perfect every time because I get better and better at it. So you have to kind of navigate those tugs inside of yourself and give yourself ultimately grace to get through it.
Yes. And I did the same thing with my podcast in the beginning. I was editing out every and making myself start over multiple times, and it took forever, and you cannot sustain it if you have a life, and so sometimes in our buckets of life, we have to look at okay, what's the priority here? Mm-hmm. And what level of done is good enough? And sometimes you got to pick and choose. So what about your podcast? So you have a podcast, and I would be curious to just kind of hear more about what are some ways you've grown the podcast and gotten it out there more.
Yeah, I actually just wrote an outline on this because I was having a lot of fun kind of diving into the podcast and seeing ways to market it. Because I will say that sometimes when you spend a lot of the front end investing on how you're going to write the episode script or what you're going to teach on or talk on, I guess, it can be okay, then the marketing's the afterthought. But a couple different things that I have done that I have found hugely beneficial, and I know it's a little bit of a hot topic or controversial, like on Threads, is when a guest completes my form, I ask them if they have left a review or rating. It doesn't make or break it. I'll still have them on the show if they haven't, but by planting that seed, they often go and leave a rating, which then helps me get seen by more people. That's a big one. What I historically was doing before that, though, was emailing after the fact and saying, hey, Hailey, thanks for coming on the show. If you get a chance, feel free to drop us a review. It's super helpful. So now I put it at the front end and the back end, and that helps me rank a little bit higher and obviously get more listeners that way. I do send a gift after someone guests on the show. I don't tend to advertise that a lot just because I do want it to come on your mailbox, and like you said, it makes me stand out a little bit. But also, I only send those gifts to genuine connections that I enjoyed, that I think we can down the road continue to collaborate. I still send a card or a note to everyone, but not necessarily the gift. And again, it's weird to like quantify that because I don't want people to think that's an expectation, but it is something that I do. And then I will actually email people after they've guested on the show and ask them who they would love to hear on the show. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and I don't have it in front of me, that's how you and I linked up, because someone else connected us because they were on the show as well.
Love that. Yeah, adding that to your form is a great idea. And I'm writing that down because I don't think I have that.
Love it.
Okay. So now my next question for you is, if someone's multi-passionate and they're wondering, where do I get started with my passion project and turning it into my business? Any final words of wisdom or things that you tell them as a first step or first things to consider?
Yeah, I would say sit with it for a little bit. Coming from someone who's like, oh, I have an idea, and then I go and buy the domain in the next 10 minutes. I would say sit with it for a little bit and be intentional with it, because I know any of your listeners are probably ambitious, go-getting sort of people who want to make impacts and make waves. So slow down a minute and just sit with it and be like, is this truly what I want to do, and what can I get out of it? Now, it might be as simple as just enjoying the moment and having fun with it, or it could be something that you could grow and flourish from and even make money off of down the road, or whatever the case is. But the first thing I would say is sit with it for a little bit, bounce the idea around, chew on it, talk with people about it, and then run with it. Like, if it sticks with you and you still feel that zest for it, go for it. Why not? Because you can always pivot away from it down the road. You might change your mind and do something different later, but if it's serving you now, enjoy it.
Nice. I love that. All right. Well, where can everybody connect with you, find out more about you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I am on Threads and Instagram at GINGERBIZ, GingerBiz. I'm a redhead for those of you listening, so that's where the ginger kind of comes from. But you can also go to my website, which is www.katymurrayphotography.com. That's KATYMURRAY photography.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Hailey.
So much for listening to this podcast, and if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful, and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.